The sun hung low over the cracked concrete of Elmwood Community Pool, painting the water in strokes of molten gold. It was one of those late August afternoons in rural Ohio where the air hummed with cicadas and the promise of autumn whispered just beyond the horizon. Alex Harper, 28 and adrift, sat on the edge of the deep end, his bare feet dangling like forgotten anchors in the chlorinated blue. His towel was already slung over his shoulder, his flip-flops kicked off beside him, ready for the short walk back to his beat-up Ford pickup. Another day checked off the calendar of mediocrity, pool maintenance shift over, no tips, no conversations worth remembering. He was done here, done with the splashes of joy from kids who didn't know yet what the world could strip away. Alex had come to Elmwood 2 months ago, chasing the ghost of a fresh start after his fiancée, Sarah, left him for a guy with a corner office and a smile that didn't crack under pressure. "You're too safe, Alex," she'd said over cold takeout in their cramped Cincinnati apartment. "Like swimming in the shallow end forever." The words had lodged in his chest like a splinter, festering. Now, he fixed leaky filters and skimmed leaves for minimum wage, wondering if safety was just another word for stagnation. Today, the pool had been emptier than usual, families squeezing out the last drops of summer before school bells rang. A few stragglers, a gaggle of preteens cannonballing with reckless abandon, an old man dozing under a faded umbrella. And her. She was in the shallow end, her silver hair pinned up in a loose bun that defied gravity, her floral swimsuit faded from too many washes but clinging to her with the quiet dignity of someone who'd earned every curve and line. Mrs. Eleanor Hayes, the locals called her, Eleanor to those who knew her laugh, which wasn't many these days. She moved through the water with deliberate strokes, not the frantic paddling of the young, but the measured grace of waves that had seen storms and survived. Alex had noticed her before, in fleeting glimpses. She'd show up around 4, swim her laps, chat with the lifeguard about the price of eggs. Harmless, he thought. The kind of fixture in a town like this that made you feel the world still had soft edges. He was pulling himself up, muscles protesting from the humidity, when her voice cut through the splash and chatter like a bell in fog. "Young man," she called, her tone light but insistent, treading water with effortless poise. "You're not leaving already, are you? The best part's just beginning." Alex paused, one hand gripping the ladder, water dripping from his swim trunks in rhythmic plops. He glanced over his shoulder, half expecting she meant someone else, the lifeguard teen scrolling TikTok, maybe, or the old man stirring from his nap. But her eyes, sharp and sea-green behind wire-rimmed glasses fogged from the steam, were locked on him. "Me," he said, the word tumbling out before he could catch it, sounding smaller than he intended. "You," she confirmed, a smile creasing the corners of her mouth like folds in a well-loved letter. "The water's warmest now, and the light, oh, it's magic. Stay a little longer. Indulge an old lady." He almost laughed, a reflex, bitter at the edges. Indulge? That's what his boss said when he asked for a raise. But there was no pity in her gaze, no charity. Just a quiet command wrapped in invitation. Against every instinct screaming to bolt, to drive back to his empty trailer and microwave another frozen dinner, Alex let his towel slip to the deck. "All right," he muttered, sliding back into the pool with a splash that sent ripples racing toward her. "But only because it's too hot to argue." She chuckled, a sound like wind chimes in a breeze, and swam closer, her strokes parting the water like secrets unfolding. Up close, he saw the fine lines etched around her eyes, the faint scar above her left eyebrow from some long-ago adventure she probably never boasted about. "I'm Eleanor," she said, extending a hand slick with pool water. He shook it, her grip surprisingly firm, calloused from years of gardening or whatever small-town saints did with their hands. "Alex," he replied, floating awkwardly, his long limbs unused to idling. The kids' laughter echoed from the other end, a reminder that joy could still erupt unbidden, but he felt miles from it. They talked, or rather, she talked, and he nodded, the words pulling him under like a gentle current. It started simple, the pool's history, built in the 50s as a WPA project, a gift from a government that once believed in public wonders. Back then, she said, her voice weaving through the steam, folks came here to cool off after church picnics, to court under the stars when the floodlights hummed on. My Henry and I. She trailed off, her gaze drifting to the surface, where the sun fractured into 1,000 diamonds. Alex waited, sensing the weight of the pause, the way it dipped below the everyday. Henry. He'd heard whispers at the gas station, widower, past 5 years back from a heart that gave out mid-harvest. No kids, just a house full of memories and a garden that bloomed wild now. Alex shifted, water lapping at his chest. Sounds nice, he offered, lame but earnest. It was, she said, then surprised him by diving under, emerging with a gasp and a grin. Race you to the wall. Loser tells a story. Before he could protest, racing an old woman, she was off, her arms slicing the water with a speed that belied her age. He lunged after her, lungs burning from disuse, but she touched the tile first, triumphant. Your turn, she panted, eyes sparkling. So he told her about Sarah, the words spilling out unbidden, the ring he'd saved for, the way her laugh used to light up their tiny kitchen, the hollow echo of her goodbye. I thought I was building something solid, he finished, voice rough. Turns out, I was just treading water. Eleanor listened without interruption, her face a map of empathy, not sympathy. When he stopped, she nodded slowly. Ah, but treading water's an art, Alex. It's what keeps you afloat when the waves crash. Henry taught me that. She paused, then added, softer, he was a treader, my Henry. Fisherman by trade, but a dreamer by heart. We'd come here summers, him teaching me to float on my back, staring at clouds that looked like lost loves. The conversation meandered like the Ohio River after rain, from cloud shapes to childhood summers, from the sting of loss to the quiet thrill of a perfect dive. Alex found himself laughing, genuinely, at her tale of sneaking into the pool after hours as a girl, only to be caught by the night watchman who joined her instead of scolding. Time slipped, the sun dipping lower, casting long shadows across the deck. The other swimmers had trickled out, leaving just the two of them and the fading light. But as the clock on the clubhouse wall ticked toward closing, Eleanor grew quieter, her strokes slower. She climbed the ladder with a wince he hadn't noticed before, favoring her right hip. Arthritis, she said when he raised an eyebrow, wrapping herself in a threadbare towel. The water's mercy, but gravity's a tyrant. Alex followed, drying off mechanically. You swim every day. Rain or shine, she replied, but her eyes held a shadow now, something unspoken pooling beneath the surface. It's my ritual. Keeps the ghosts at bay. She glanced at him, that same insistent gaze from earlier. You should come back tomorrow. Same time. We could. I don't know, make it a thing. He hesitated, the old pull to retreat tugging at him. His truck keys burned in his pocket. But her words from the start echoed, stay a little longer. What harm in one more day? Yeah, he said, surprising himself. I will. As he drove home that night, windows down to let the cornfield breeze scour his skin, Alex replayed the afternoon. It was nothing monumental, just talk, a race lost to a grandmotherly force of nature. Yet something had shifted, subtle as a ripple widening. For the first time in months, the emptiness in his chest felt less like a void and more like space, room for whatever came next. Little did he know, the next day would crack him open. The following afternoon arrived with a sky bruised purple, thunder rumbling distant like a warning unheeded. Alex pulled into the Elmwood lot earlier than planned, his shift ending in an hour but his feet carrying him to the pool fence anyway. The air smelled of ozone and wet earth, the kind of scent that promised change whether you wanted it or not. He changed in the locker room, the fluorescent buzz overhead mirroring the hum in his veins. Why was he here? Routine, he told himself. Or curiosity. But deep down, it was her, Eleanor's unyielding warmth, a buoy in his drifting sea. The pool was busier today, locals fleeing the brewing storm for one last dip. Kids shrieked as rain-spattered drops kissed the surface, turning it into a canvas of fleeting polka dots. Eleanor was already there, in her usual spot, but something was off. She wasn't swimming. Instead, she perched on the pool steps, knees drawn up, staring at the water as if it held answers she couldn't quite grasp. Her bun had come loose, silver strands framing a face paler than yesterday, etched with lines that spoke of more than years. "Hey," Alex called, approaching with a wave that felt too casual. "Beat you here. Ready to lose another race?" She looked up, and for a split second, her eyes were distant, lost in some inner tide. Then she smiled, but it didn't reach the corners like before. "Alex. You came." Relief flickered in her voice, soft as a sigh. She patted the step beside her. "Sit. The rain's holding off, but I could use the company." He lowered himself next to her, the concrete warm against his skin, water lapping gently at their calves. Up close, he noticed the tremble in her hands, the way she clasped them to still it. "Everything okay?" he asked, the question hanging heavy. She exhaled, long and slow, watching a leaf skitter across the pool's surface before the current claimed it. "Not really," she admitted, her voice a threadbare whisper. "Doctor's visit this morning. The kind that comes with pamphlets and pitying nods. Cancer, stage 3. The words landed like stones in still water, sending shockwaves through him. She'd known for months, fought it quietly with chemo that stole her strength but not her swims. Henry gone, no family to lean on, just the pool, this ritual of buoyancy. Alex's throat tightened, the world narrowing to the splash of distant dives and the rise-fall of her breath. "Why didn't you say?" he managed, foolish even to himself. As if words could armor her. And burden a stranger? She shook her head, a wry twist to her lips. "Besides, we're not strangers anymore, are we? Not after yesterday." She turned to him then, her gaze piercing. "Tell me something true, Alex. What's the deepest you've ever dived? Not in feet, but in feeling." The question caught him off guard, pulling at threads he'd buried. He thought of Sarah's leaving, the nights he'd driven aimless highways, radio static his only companion. "I don't know," he said finally. "Maybe when she walked out. Felt like drowning without water, choking on air that wouldn't fill me." Eleanor nodded, unsurprised. "That's the dive. The one where you hit bottom and push up, or you don't come back." She paused, rain beginning to patter now, light as secrets. "Henry and I dove once, off the Keys. Florida, 78. Storm-churned sea, waves like God's tantrum. He went under, didn't come up right away. I thought, but he surfaced, grinning, with a conch shell clutched in his fist. 'For you,' he said. 'To hear the ocean when we're landlocked.' We laughed, but later, in the quiet, I realized, he stayed under longer so I wouldn't have to." The story hung between them, profound in its simplicity, a moment of selflessness that echoed across decades. Alex felt it stir something in him, a realization blooming unexpected. His own life, safe and shallow, hadn't demanded such depths. Not yet. But here was Eleanor, facing the ultimate plunge, still offering shells of wisdom. The rain picked up, fat drops drumming the deck, sending swimmers scattering like startled birds. The lifeguard blew his whistle, hurting folks inside, but Eleanor made no move to leave. "One more thing," she said, voice steadying. "Promise me you'll dive deeper, Alex. Not recklessly, but truly. For the ones who can't anymore." He promised, the word solemn as an oath, even as thunder cracked overhead. They sat through the downpour, the pool emptying until it was just them and the storm's symphony, rain sheeting the water into silver chaos. When it eased to a drizzle, she stood, slower now, and he offered his arm without thinking. Together, they walked to the clubhouse, her leaning just enough to feel like partnership, not pity. That night, sleep evaded Alex. Eleanor's words replayed, "Stay under longer." By dawn, realization crystallized. He couldn't just nod and swim away. He called in sick to his shift, drove to the county library instead, burying himself in books on caregiving, support groups, the quiet revolutions of compassion. The next day, he showed up at her door with a thermos of chamomile tea and a dog-eared novel about second chances. "Figured you could use a new ritual," he said, sheepish. What followed blurred into weeks of unexpected grace. Mornings at the pool when she could manage, him timing her laps with a stopwatch app, cheering like a fool. Afternoons in her garden, pulling weeds side by side, her teaching him to coax tomatoes from stubborn soil. Evenings on her porch, fireflies winking as she shared Henry's letters, yellowed pages of love that spanned wars and winters. Alex listened, absorbed, his own stories unfolding in turn, dreams of opening a community center, teaching kids to swim beyond fear. "Not shallow end stuff," he'd say, echoing her. But the turns came swift, as life insists. One Tuesday, chemo floored her, leaving her bedridden, the pool a distant dream. Alex panicked, driving through sheets of rain to her side, only to find her frail but fierce, dictating a letter to him. "For the garden club," she rasped. "Tell them to plant sunflowers, tall ones, that bow to no one." He wrote it out, hands shaking, then read it back, her nod a seal of trust. The climax built in whispers, then erupted on a crisp October morning, leaves turning the town to flame. Eleanor's strength waned, hospice whispers in the halls, but she insisted on one last visit to the pool. Alex carried her there in his truck, blanket-wrapped, the air sharp with fallen apples. The manager unlocked the gate, a quiet conspiracy of kindness. He eased her into the shallow end, water cradling her like an old friend. "Stay a little longer," she murmured, eyes closing in bliss. That's when it hit him, the profound pivot. Not her words, but the act, he'd become the one staying, the treader holding space. As she floated, weightless, he whispered his own truth. "You saved me first, Eleanor. That day. I was leaving more than the pool. Leaving everything." Tears mixed with the water, unseen. In that moment, compassion crested, not grand gestures, but the selfless vigil of presence. He held her hand, the pool a sanctuary of shared depths, transforming his isolation into unbreakable bond. She passed 2 weeks later, peaceful as a sigh, sunflowers blooming defiant outside her window. At the service, a small gathering in the town square, Alex spoke, halting at first, then steady. "Eleanor taught us to stay longer," he said, voice carrying to the crowd of neighbors who'd shown up, bearing casseroles and stories. "In the water, in the hard dives, in each other. That's the power, the humanity that pulls us up when we're under." He planted the community center seed that spring, a non-profit pool program for at-risk kids, funded by bake sales and Heart. It thrived, ripples widening, a boy who learned to float, a mom who found her stride. Alex met someone eventually, a teacher with a laugh like summer rain, but that's another story. The heart of it lingered in Elmwood's waters, kindness as current, selflessness as depth, the simple plea to stay that mends what time tears. And on quiet afternoons, when the sun gilds the pool just so, Alex swears he hears her, indulge a little longer. A reminder that in staying, we save, not just others, but the best, unbroken parts of ourselves. In a world that rushes to leave, what could be more revolutionary than remaining? Hope floats, after all, if we let it.